The priest pressed a gold ring into my palm, and I recognized the hand I was supposed to die wearing it for. Cold candlelight trembled across the cathedral's black marble walls. Somewhere behind me, 200 guests fell silent, leaving only the low hum of an organ and the sharp tick of rain against stained glass. My fingers closed around the ring's engraved wolf crest. I had seen it before, on the cover of my favorite BL novel, beneath the Volkov crown. Julian. The man waiting at the altar spoke my name like a warning. Roman Volkov stood 6 feet away in a charcoal suit, broad shoulders motionless beneath the tailored wool. Silver cuff links caught the candlelight. His dark eyes stayed fixed on me while the faint scent of cedar and gun oil cut through the incense. Roman. Mafia Alpha. Ruthless head of the Volkov family. And, as of the next 30 seconds, my husband. My pulse struck hard against my collar. This cathedral. These white roses. The armed men positioned beside every column. I knew this scene word for word. Julian Vale married Roman to settle a blood feud between their families. Then he spent a month provoking the Alpha who never wanted him, betrayed the Volkov household, and died on the 30th night of their marriage. The priest cleared his throat. The ring, Mr. Vale. I looked down at myself. Pale hands. An ivory jacket fastened with pearl buttons. A narrow scar crossing the right thumb. The same scar the novel described when Julian shattered a champagne glass during the reception. This was not a dream borrowing details from a book. I was standing inside its opening chapter, wearing a doomed man's body. Roman extended his hand. A thin silver watch rested against his wrist. Midnight approached beneath its glass face, November 1st. The date drove the remaining air from my lungs. Julian's death happened at midnight on December 1st. 30 days. A month to escape a fate already printed in ink. Do you need assistance? Roman asked. His voice remained quiet, but leather shifted behind us as his guards adjusted their grips beneath their jackets. Refusing the ring would insult him before every Volkov captain and every Vale witness. Running would begin a war. The original Julian had smirked here, pushed the ring onto Roman's finger, and whispered that no cage could hold him. I remembered the sentence because it had sealed his fate long before the final chapter. Roman's gaze dropped to my shaking hand. I could not change the wedding without risking death tonight. But I could refuse to become the man whose choices led to death 30 nights later. I slid the ring onto Roman's finger. The metal was warm from my palm. His skin was cool and rough beneath it. I accept, I said, and the words echoed beneath the vaulted ceiling. Roman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He had expected mockery. Instead, I met his eyes and finished the vow without the original Julian's threat. The priest pronounced us married. Applause rolled through the cathedral, too measured to sound joyful. Roman offered me his arm, and camera shutters snapped from the aisles. His sleeve felt firm beneath my fingertips. Up close, I noticed a pale line near his temple and the controlled rhythm of his breathing. This was the man I had admired from the safety of another world, now real enough to destroy me if I followed the story he knew. As we started down the aisle, Roman leaned close enough that his breath warmed my ear. Whatever game you're playing, husband, choose your next move carefully. White petals crushed under our shoes, releasing a sweet, bruised scent. I smiled for the cameras while the cathedral doors opened onto a wall of black umbrellas and idling armored cars. 30 days remained before Julian Vale's written death. And tomorrow, if the book had not already begun to change, someone would try to assassinate Roman Volkov. Rain rattled against the armored limousine roof, sharp as handfuls of thrown rice. The cabin smelled of chilled leather and Roman's dark cedar scent, while blue-gray daylight slid across the privacy glass. 2 blocks from the cathedral, I reached forward and pressed the intercom button. Cancel tomorrow's route through Bellwether Square. The driver's eyes flicked toward me in the mirror. Roman slowly removed one black glove, finger by finger. My husband has been a Volkov for 12 minutes, he said, and already wants to rearrange my security. Not rearrange it. Keep you alive. The tires hissed over wet pavement. I gave him every detail I could remember without explaining how I knew. The charity luncheon at 1, the eastern entrance reserved for Roman, the flower delivery van parked beside the service alley, and the shooter waiting behind a 3rd-floor window across the square. In the novel, the first bullet missed. The second killed Roman's driver. Afterward, everyone praised Roman's instincts. never realizing the attack had been designed to test a traitor's access to his schedule. Roman's gaze did not leave my face. That luncheon was confirmed this morning. The route was approved an hour ago. His voice remained quiet, but the air inside the car seemed to lose several degrees. Who told you? No one. Then you invented a remarkably specific way for me to die. His hand settled beside his jacket, close to the shape concealed beneath it. I could still retreat, laugh, become the spiteful socialite he had expected to marry. Instead, I pressed the intercom again. Pull over. The driver obeyed only after Roman gave a slight nod. We stopped beneath an elevated train line where steel wheels thundered overhead and muddy water streamed along the curb. I opened my door. Cold rain struck my face and soaked the shoulder of my wedding coat before Roman caught my wrist. What are you doing? Making this public enough that you can't dismiss it as bedroom manipulation. I stepped onto the sidewalk, forcing him either to release me before his guards or follow. Doors opened around us. Men in dark suits emerged beneath black umbrellas, their polished shoes splashing through shallow puddles. I raised my voice. Tomorrow at Bellwether Square, someone will use a white flower van to hide surveillance on your eastern approach. A shooter will be positioned on the third floor across from the service alley. Every guard heard me. So did Roman. If I was wrong, I had just announced either madness or treason to the Volkov family. My borrowed reputation could survive neither. Roman came out without an umbrella. Rain jeweled his black hair and traced the pale scar near his temple. Search the square tonight, he ordered. Replace the route team. Detain anyone who knew the original approach. His security chief hesitated. Boss, based on his word. Based on mine. That decision silenced the sidewalk. Roman stepped close, still holding my wrist, but his thumb moved once against my racing pulse as if measuring something no weapon could reveal. The man I agreed to marry would have sold that information, he murmured, or used it to bargain for my attention. A train screamed over the tracks, shaking droplets from the iron beams. Maybe you never knew him as well as you thought. No, Roman said, studying me with a focus sharper than suspicion. I knew him exactly. He released my wrist and opened the limousine door himself. You have until midnight to tell me who taught my husband to save my life. A grandfather clock struck 11 beneath Volkov house, each chime sinking through stone walls that smelled of cedar smoke and cold steel. Beyond a pair of black oak doors, men spoke in clipped voices over the whisper of maps sliding across polished wood. I knew that room. In the novel, Julian Vale never entered it alive. Roman had taken my phone, posted guards outside my suite, and promised to collect my answer at midnight. None of that mattered after I heard the name Bellwether through the ventilation grate. I crossed the corridor, pressed my newly issued wedding ring against the brass scanner, and watched the forbidden doors unlock. A dozen Alpha enforcers turned toward me. Blue map light cut across holstered pistols and crystal tumblers. At the head of the table, Roman sat beneath the silver Volkov crest, his jacket discarded and his sleeves rolled to his forearms. Leave, his security chief said. I shut the doors behind me instead. Mikhail Orlov gave your route to the assassins. Silence followed, broken only by the faint hiss of the fireplace. Mikhail rose from Roman's right hand, silver-haired and broad-shouldered, the family treasurer who had served the Volkovs for 20 years. In the original story, his betrayal remained hidden until Roman's empire was already bleeding. Your husband appears confused, Mikhail said. Search his left cuff, I replied. 2 guards moved, but Roman lifted one finger. They stopped instantly. His dark gaze remained on me. You had until midnight to answer my question, Julian. Not to invade my counsel. Then consider this my answer. No one taught me. I know things I shouldn't. Mikhail's hand drifted toward his jacket. I stepped between him and the table before common sense could catch me. The cuff link contains a microdrive, Bellwether's route, the backup vehicles, and the frequency used by Roman's escort. Mikhail smiled without warmth. Then Roman moved. He caught Mikhail's wrist, twisted it away from the jacket, and tore free the square onyx cuff link. Metal clicked against the tabletop. His security chief cracked it open with a pocket tool, revealing a black memory chip no larger than a fingernail. The room erupted in scraped chairs and shouted orders. Roman never raised his voice. Open it. A laptop screen filled with convoy diagrams, payment records, and photographs of Bellwether Square. Mikhail's face lost its color under the icy light. Guards pinned his arms and removed his weapon. "This proves nothing about tomorrow," he said. "It proves you sold my movements," Roman answered. "Take him downstairs." Mikhail resisted only long enough to look at me. "You just killed the wrong future." The words struck harder than a threat. In the book, Roman discovered Mikhail on day 23. Bellwether came first. By exposing him tonight, I had removed the man who was supposed to lead investigators to the shooter after the failed attack. The map on the screen flickered. A red notification appeared over the scheduled convoy route. Operation canceled. Then every file began erasing itself. "Disconnected," I said. The security chief pulled the cable, but the folders kept vanishing. Someone else had remote access, someone the original plot had never named. Roman came around the table until the heat of him pressed through the chilled room. He had chosen to act on my accusation. Now the certainty I had brought him was dissolving in front of us. Mikhail was the traitor, I whispered. He was supposed to be the traitor. Roman's eyes narrowed at that single word. Supposed. On the screen, the Bellwether plans disappeared last. A new route replaced them, one I had never seen, ending at Volkov House. Outside, iron gates groaned shut and engines gathered in the courtyard. Roman drew his pistol and placed himself beside me rather than in front of me. "Your knowledge just became obsolete," he said as the lights went out. In the darkness, his hand closed around mine. "Now tell me what happens when your future starts changing." Gunfire cracked through the darkness from somewhere inside Volkov House, not beyond its iron gates. The sound struck the marble walls and multiplied, sharp enough to drown out the alarms. Emergency lights flickered on in strips of blood red along the floor as Julian felt Roman's hand release his. "Stay behind the table," Roman ordered. Instead of obeying, Julian grabbed the abandoned laptop and dragged it down with him. Its warm casing vibrated beneath his palms while the screen flashed between erased folders and the unfamiliar route. A ventilation diagram surfaced for half a second, and Julian recognized nothing about it. That frightened him more than any scene he remembered. Cold air rushed from the ceiling vents, carrying the bitter smell of scorched wiring. Roman raised his pistol toward the council chamber doors, but no attacker came through them. A metallic click sounded overhead. Julian looked up as a narrow ceiling panel opened. Roman moved. He drove his shoulder into Roman's side. The suppressed shot meant for Roman's chest struck high near his shoulder instead, spinning him against the marble table. Roman fired once at the vent, forcing the hidden shooter back, then caught himself on one knee. Dark blood spread beneath his torn jacket, glossy under the red lights. The security chief burst through the doors with 2 guards and stopped when he saw Julian kneeling beside Roman. Julian had Roman's pistol in one hand. His other hand was pressed against the wound. "Weapon down," the chief commanded. "The shooter is in the ventilation system," Julian said. "Seal the eastern ducts." There are no eastern ducts connected to this room. Boots pounded in the corridor. The chief's men leveled their guns at Julian, while Roman's breathing turned rough beneath his palm. On the laptop, the replacement route ended at the council chamber, marked with a blinking white point directly above Roman's chair. Only Julian had seen the route before the power failed. Only Julian had shouted before the ceiling panel moved. "Search it," Julian demanded. The chief sent a guard up through a maintenance hatch. Seconds passed under the pulsing alarm. Then the guard's voice returned through the radio, distorted by static. "Passage is empty. No weapon. No shooter." A soft hiss came from the ceiling. Fire suppressant poured through the vents, filling the chamber with chemical fog and wiping pale dust from every surface overhead. Whoever had fired had built an escape into the attack. Julian tore Roman's tie free and folded it against the wound. "You can interrogate me after he has a surgeon." The security chief stepped closer, his shoes grinding over broken glass. "You predicted Bellwether. You exposed Mikhail. Tonight the entire plan changed, yet you still knew exactly when to move." Roman's fingers closed around Julian's wrist. Despite the gray cast beneath his skin, his grip remained commanding. "Stand down," he told the guards. The chief did not lower his weapon. "Sir, he is the only person who could have arranged this." Roman tried to rise, but his injured arm buckled. This time Julian caught him, taking Roman's full weight as warm blood soaked through his sleeve. The guards watched their feared alpha lean against the husband no one trusted. "Medical room," Roman said through clenched teeth. Now. The chief finally shifted aside, though the barrel followed Julian across the chamber. At the doorway, a guard lifted Julian's confiscated wedding phone from an evidence bag. Its black screen had activated without being touched. One message glowed across it. You saved him differently this time. Roman read the words over Julian's shoulder. The hall fell silent except for the hiss of suppressant behind them. Then the security chief locked a steel cuff around Julian's free wrist. Roman Volkov leaves for surgery, he said. His husband comes with me. Cold fluorescent light washed the holding room in colorless bands, while rain ticked against the narrow window like fingernails on glass. Julian sat beneath an air vent that smelled of antiseptic and burned suppressant, one wrist cuffed to a steel table still cold from the night. 23 minutes after Roman disappeared behind the surgical doors, the lock snapped open. The Volkov security chief entered with 2 guards and placed Julian's wedding phone inside a clear evidence bag on the table. The message came through an unregistered relay, he said. No sender. No recoverable route. Julian studied the glowing words without touching the bag. Then whoever sent it can enter your communications network. Or you arranged it before the wedding. The chief slid a black folder forward. An execution order waited inside. Roman's seal already stamped beneath Julian's name. Council requires only my signature. A monitor on the wall flickered to life before Julian could answer. Roman appeared from the medical room, pale beneath the blue-white lights, his shoulder wrapped in fresh bandages. A heart monitor pulsed somewhere beyond the camera, steady and mechanical. Remove the order, Roman said. The chief's jaw tightened. The council invoked emergency authority. Protecting him now can trigger a confidence vote. I know. If they remove you, every Volkov captain will choose a side. Roman's uninjured hand closed around the edge of the medical bed. Then let them choose while looking at me. His gaze settled on Julian. Take off the cuff. No guard moved. Roman reached toward a biometric panel beside his bed and pressed his thumb against the glass. A soft chime sounded. The steel bracelet opened, and the screens around the holding room filled with the Volkov crest. Julian rubbed the red mark around his wrist as directories unfolded across the monitor. Encrypted calls, financial ledgers, vehicle logs, safehouse registries, and names powerful men had killed to keep hidden. The security chief stared at the access designation flashing above them. Spousal authority, black level. You gave him unrestricted access, he said. I gave my husband the means to prove who tried to kill me. Roman's voice remained quiet, but the speakers carried it into every corner. For the next 48 hours, Julian speaks with my authority inside the network. No file is withheld. No contact is warned. No one follows him unless he requests protection. And if he runs? Then I lose more than a suspect. Roman looked past the camera toward someone Julian could not see. Record this for the council. If Julian Vale betrays the Volkov family, the failure is mine. Any motion against him is a motion against me. The chief removed his earpiece and set it on the table with a hard plastic click. That statement may cost you the chair before sunrise. Send it. The monitor dimmed, leaving Roman's face framed by surgical light. Julian stepped closer. You don't know what I am. No, Roman said. But I know what you did. You warned me when silence would have kept you safe. You entered my council chamber knowing they could kill you. And when the shot came, you moved toward me. His eyes dropped briefly to Julian's bruised wrist. Those are choices. I trust choices more than explanations. A guard brought in a matte black tablet, warm from its charging dock. Julian accepted it, and the Volkov network opened beneath his thumb. He did not search for another clue. Instead, he activated a system-wide command and froze every council member's private account and clearance badge. Across the estate, distant alarms began chiming behind locked doors. The security chief turned sharply. What did you do? Stop the killer from moving money, issuing orders, or leaving before I can question anyone. Julian faced Roman on the screen. If I'm going to use your name, I won't hide behind it. For the first time, the corner of Roman's mouth shifted. Then every monitor flashed crimson. A council ballot had opened automatically, counting down from 6 hours. At the top of the screen, one question burned in white letters. Should Roman Volkov be removed for surrendering the family to his husband? Roman leaned back against the hospital pillow as the first vote registered against him. Find the person who fired that shot, he said. before my family decides our marriage is reason enough to bury us both. A soft chime rolled through the operations room as another vote against Roman lit the wall of monitors. Server fans breathed hot metallic air across Julian's face, and beneath the amber emergency lights, the frozen Volkov accounts formed a grid of red locks. He searched for the shooter's payment, but every transaction ended at the same blank authorization field. Not a council code. A Vale cipher. Julian inserted his confiscated phone into the terminal. The screen requested a living family signature, then unlocked beneath his thumb. A sealed archive opened. Surveillance schedules for Volkov House, suppressant orders, architectural plans marking the council chamber ceiling, and a transfer authorized through the Vale family trust. The body Julian inhabited had not merely married Roman. His family had delivered him as a doorway. A second file bore the seal of the civil registry. Its terms were brutally simple. If Julian accused House Vale of conspiracy, his marriage settlement would be revoked, every account and property in his name would revert to the family, and he would be legally disowned. The archive could identify the network used by the shooter, but submitting it to Volkov security would trigger those penalties automatically. Julian called the surgical ward. Roman appeared on screen, pale beneath the blue-white hospital lights, one shoulder immobilized under a black sling. Rain tapped the window behind him. The payment came through my family, Julian said. Roman's gaze moved from the files to the revocation clause. Send me the network route. Keep the source sealed. Then the council calls it manufactured evidence. I can survive a confidence vote. Roman's voice roughened. You cannot rebuild a name once you burn it. Julian removed the Vale signet ring from his finger. Its gold surface was warm, the engraved crest cutting into his palm. That name bought access to your home and put a gun above your chair. It also owns everything protecting you from my world. Not everything. Julian touched the black level emblem glowing beside his name. I still have 48 hours as your husband. Before Roman could answer, Julian opened a house-wide channel. His voice traveled through Volkov House, into council chambers, guard stations, and the surgical ward. I, Julian Vale, submit authenticated evidence that House Vale financed the attack against Roman Volkov. I surrender all claims protected by my birth family and authorize immediate seizure of their connected assets. The terminal demanded confirmation. Roman pushed himself upright, pain tightening his mouth. Julian, stop. Julian pressed his thumb to the glass. The signet ring beside his hand turned from gold to gray under the scanning light. Confirmation bells rang in rapid succession. His private balance vanished first, then his estate access, inheritance, vehicles, legal protections, and family credentials disappeared line by line. Across the monitors, Vale accounts opened to Volkov inspection, exposing the payment chain and the shooter's internal relay. The confidence ballot stuttered. 2 votes against Roman withdrew. The security chief's image appeared on a side screen, his expression sharpened by the green glow of verified records. The evidence clears Julian of firing the shot, he said. Vale credentials activated the sealing route. A message arrived before the last asset finished transferring. No sender. No encryption. Just 5 words. You have an home now. The operations room doors unlocked with a heavy mechanical thud, but Julian did not move. Roman remained silent on the monitor, staring at the bare finger where the Vale crest had been. Julian closed the empty account page. The shooter's network is yours. Your council has its proof. And what do you have? Roman asked. The room cooled as the server fans accelerated, carrying the smell of dust and overheated wiring. Julian looked at the black level authority still burning beside his name, the only status the purge had not erased. A husband, he said, if you still mean it. The hospital feed went quiet. Then Roman leaned toward the camera, his eyes hard and unwavering. Come to me before that authority expires. There is one thing you must tell me without evidence, codes, or another borrowed name. Cold blue lights spilled beneath the surgical ward door, cutting across the polished floor while a heart monitor kept time behind a glass. The air smelled of antiseptic and rain carried in on Julian's coat. When the lock released, Julian entered alone and placed his temporary black level badge on the steel table between them. Roman sat upright against white pillows, his left shoulder immobilized beneath a dark brace. No guard stood inside. Even the surveillance lens above the door had been covered with black medical tape. You asked for the truth without proof, Julian said. You have it. Roman reached for the control panel and shut off the privacy alarm. The low electronic hum died, leaving only rain ticking against the window. Then stopped speaking like Julian Vale. Julian's fingers tightened around the table's cold edge. He had surrendered wealth, protection, and a family name, but those losses had existed on screens and legal records. This truth could take the one person he had chosen to keep. The man you married is gone, he said. I woke inside his body during our wedding. Roman's expression did not change. Julian forced himself onward. I came from another world. In that world, you were a character in a BL novel I loved. I knew the convoy route, Mikhail's betrayal, the assassination, and the date Julian Vale was supposed to die because I had read them. The monitor accelerated by 3 sharp beats. Roman swung his legs off the bed despite the warning light flashing beside his brace. And everything you did was to survive your assigned ending? At first, Julian removed the black level badge from the table and set it beside Roman's hand. Then you trusted me when execution would have been safer. You gave me your family's power. I destroyed the only identity protecting me because losing it was better than watching you die. Roman studied the badge, then closed his fingers over Julian's wrist instead. His palm was warm. The hospital band scraped softly against Julian's skin. On our wedding night, Julian Vale called my scent disgusting, Roman said. You woke, looked at me as if you had seen a ghost, and asked whether my shoulders still hurt from a knife wound no one outside my inner circle knew about. His grip remained steady. I knew before sunrise that you were not him. Julian stared at the covered camera. You still married me. I married the stranger who warned me when running would have saved him. Roman pulled open the bedside drawer and removed a thin black invitation card embossed with silver initials. Lucien Hart, the original hero, the man destined to survive every tragedy while Roman became the beautiful monster who died for him. Hart requested entry to Volkov house 3 weeks before our wedding, Roman said. Every altered attack began after I refused him. Julian took the card. The paper felt unnaturally smooth, and a familiar line had been handwritten across its back. A villain only becomes lovable when he dies for the hero. That sentence was in the final chapter, Julian whispered. Roman rose, pain tightening his jaw, and crossed to the wall safe. He pressed Julian's thumb to the scanner before Julian could object. The safe opened with a heavy click. Inside lay confiscated copies of the changed routes, Julian's impossible messages, and Lucien's authorization signature linking them together. Roman had not summoned him for an explanation. He had assembled the answer. Lucien isn't preserving the story, Julian said. He's forcing it back toward the ending where you die. A red countdown illuminated the black level badge. 1 hour 57 minutes and 42 seconds. Roman placed the evidence into Julian's hands and closed the safe. When that authority expires, the council can separate us and deliver Volkov house to him. His gaze held Julian's without softness or doubt. So tell me, husband, if the hero controls the ending, what are we willing to destroy to take it from him? The black level badge pulsed red against the stainless steel table, its countdown reflected in the dark window. 1 hour 56 minutes and 3 seconds. Beyond the sealed surgical room, alarms began chiming through the hospital network, sharp and evenly spaced, while cold air hissed from the ceiling vents carrying the sterile bite of antiseptic. Julian opened the leather notebook he had hidden beneath his wedding clothes since the night he awakened. Every page held an advantage stolen from the novel. Convoy routes, betrayals, deaths, and the choices Roman had once been scripted to make. New ink crawled across the final sheet without a hand touching it. Volkov's succession protocol initiated. Lucien is starting the coup now, Julian said. The lights flickered. On the wall monitor, armed Volkov units changed allegiance one by one as Lucien's forged commands spread through the network. Julian's authority could block them, but each defense required a prediction from the notebook, and every prediction gave Lucien another path back into the system. The book was not merely recording the plot. It was the bridge allowing him to correct it. Julian carried it to the surgical sterilizer. Roman caught his wrist. His palm was hot, his hospital bracelet rough against Julian's skin. Without that, you lose every warning. And Lucien loses every ending. Julian placed the notebook inside the steel chamber. For one breath, the open pages showed Roman's original death beneath the council crest. Then Julian closed the door and pressed the ignition switch. White heat flooded the narrow window. Leather curled, paper blackened, and the handwritten future vanished behind orange flame. The network screens went blank. So did Julian's borrowed certainty. A second later, the black level badge stopped counting down at 1 hour 41 minutes and 18 seconds and displayed a single message. Authority revoked by succession vote. Heavy footsteps struck the corridor tiles. The Volkov security chief's voice came through the intercom, strained by static. The council has recognized Lucien Hart as emergency regent. They demand Julian Vale be surrendered immediately. Roman released Julian's wrist and reached for the wall console. His fingers left a faint smear of blood from the loosened foreport, but his voice remained level when he opened a transmission to every Volkov officer, accountant, and council member. This is Roman Volkov. Effective immediately, I renounce the throne, command authority, and all protections attached to my name. Julian turned from the sterilizer. Roman removed the obsidian signet ring that had passed through 6 generations and set it beneath the camera. The metal clicked against glass. No regent can inherit power from a living head who has dissolved his claim. Lucien now holds an empty title. Angry voices erupted over the channel. Roman silenced them with one command and uploaded Lucien's authorization signature, the altered attack orders, and the hospital records proving the coup had begun while Roman was under surgical care. "You wanted my husband without facing me," Roman said. "Come take him now." The corridor went quiet. Then the elevator bell sounded at the far end of the ward. Once, the security feed returned, grainy and washed in crimson emergency light. Lucien Hart stepped from the elevator alone, no longer protected by Roman's throne or hidden behind the council's authority. Julian stood beside Roman with no family name, no fortune, no future written in advance. Roman had no crown, no legal shield, and no army he could command by birthright. Yet when the lock on the surgical room door began turning from the outside, Roman reached for Julian's hand instead of a weapon. "Whatever happens next," he murmured, "we choose it." The door opened, and Lucien raised Roman's discarded signet ring between 2 fingers. "Then choose," he said, "which one of you leaves this room alive." The signet ring struck the tile and spun beneath the crimson emergency lights, its metallic song cutting through the surgical ward. Cold antiseptics stung the air as Lucien lunged for Julian, but Julian did not retreat behind Roman. He stepped forward and caught Lucien's wrist while Roman triggered the ward's public broadcast with his free hand. Every council screen lit up. Lucien froze beneath the camera's red indicator, his demand replaying across the Volkov network in his own voice. The security chief entered with armed guards, not to obey a throne, but to enforce the evidence Roman had already released. With the regency dissolved and the coup exposed, Lucien possessed no lawful command. His own confession completed what the files had begun. The guards removed the stolen ring from the floor and escorted him away as dawn turned the narrow windows silver. 3 days later, Roman faced the surviving council without weapons, guards, or inherited insignia. The chamber smelled of old leather and extinguished cigars. Rain tapped against the black glass overhead. Julian stood beside him, wearing no veil crest and carrying no notebook. Roman offered the family a new charter, leadership chosen by vote, finances independently audited, marriages barred from political coercion, and no alpha permitted to rule through bloodline alone. The council accepted. Roman returned as its elected head, no longer because his name commanded obedience, but because the people before him chose his terms. That night, a doorway appeared in Julian's hospital room, framed by warm light and the faint scent of coffee from the apartment he remembered. Beyond it waited his old phone, his unmade bed, and a life untouched by Volkov blood or Vale betrayal. Roman remained several feet away. "I won't ask you to sacrifice another home for me." Julian approached the threshold until familiar city traffic murmured from the other side. Then he reached back, took Roman's hand, and closed the door himself. The light vanished without thunder, leaving only their joined shadows across the floor. Weeks later, winter sunlight poured through the glass roof of a quiet garden. There were no council banners, armed witnesses, or contractual vows. The security chief guarded the entrance in a plain dark suit, while a handful of loyal friends stood among white roses and cedar branches. Roman waited without his signet ring. Julian walked toward him under his own name, the only one he needed now. When Roman offered his hand, Julian did not accept it immediately. He took the original marriage contract from his coat, tore it cleanly in half, and let both pieces fall into the ceremonial flame. Paper curled black, cedar smoke warmed the cold air. The first time, someone else decided who I had to become, Julian said. Today, I decide whom I love. Roman's voice roughened. And if loving me changes every future you could have had. Julian placed a simple silver band on Roman's finger. Then we'll build one neither world wrote for us. Roman gave him the matching ring, and their vows contained no promises of obedience, possession, or fate. Only honesty, choice, and the right to walk away. Julian stayed anyway. Beneath the winter sun, he kissed his Mafia Alpha as a husband no story had assigned, but as the man he had freely chosen.